What's up, guys? It's Patricia from TarantulaHeaven.com. We have Miss Spidey, my Grammostola rosea, right in the front, laying at the almost opening of her log. She has put a moss ball right in front of it so she can't get in. And I sense that she really wants to get in. So maybe you'll see her doing something weird. Anyway, so I know I've covered this topic before, but I think it's always worth repeating and, kind of doing a refresher because I know every now and then new tarantula owners do come to the channel. And so my goal is to make your tarantula's behavior the least amount of stressful as possible. So depending on where you are in the world, here on the East Coast of the United States, it is fall. And it's getting pretty cold. We've had some really weird weather where it's been, we are in, at the time of this shooting, we are in early November. And just last week, it was like in the high 60s, 70s-ish. And it felt like spring, summer. And then this week, it's cold again. So nobody really knows what's going on, what to wear, anything. And I do think that that probably is felt by our animals. You may notice that your tarantula has some different behaviors as it gets colder, and maybe not so much right now since the weather's kind of in between, but as it starts to get more regularly cold, and then definitely once we get into winter, I wanted to talk about some things that you can expect and things that you shouldn't really be alarmed about. So one of the things that Spidey's not really a great example because her eating habits are weird anyway, but a lot of times your tarantulas will slow down their appetite, or their appetite will decrease. So you may notice that they don't want food as much, that their prey response or their eating response isn't as powerful. They seem less interested. So that's perfectly normal. If you had a tarantula who would eat like a few prey items at once, maybe they're only doing one, maybe they're skipping meals, whatever it is, that's nothing to really be alarmed about. And there's so many reasons why tarantulas do that, like pre-molt being one of them and the big one, but also that it's really normal for their metabolism to actually slow down, which does affect their appetite. And they also get really lazy in the winter when it's cold. So you will also notice that your tarantula doesn't really want to move around very much or isn't as active as they used to be, which can also kind of put a damper on that prey response that you might be used to. So that's something to keep in mind, and they are not necessarily issues unless your tarantula starts to look really dehydrated or, not looking very good. Those things are very, very normal. And it's also worth mentioning that some tarantulas are not affected at all. Like, I've heard of some tarantulas who, no matter what time of year it is, no matter what the temperature is, they are always ready to eat. Spidey is not that girl. She, very much like her reputation of being a G. rosea, Chilean rosehair, suggests, is a very fussy eater. She will just starve herself for months, sometimes over a year, and she'll be fine. She does that all the time, actually. And so it's always like touch and go. It's always like stop and go with Spidey's appetite. I would say that 90% of my time with her has been me trying to offer her food and just seeing if she is eating again. Usually most of the time she's not, but she remains a healthy spider. So I believe she knows what she's doing. You may also notice that along with maybe not really eating that much, not really being active, they may also seem a little bit more reclusive. I have not seen Spidey do winter specific like burrowing or tunneling, but I did see with Arizona Blonde Blinky where this little tarantula, who I unfortunately no longer have, they would be underground during the winter for like the entire winter. So that might be something that your tarantula does if they are a species that likes to dig. Another thing that could be helpful to pay attention to are any signs of stress. So for example, your tarantula may try to climb their walls, they may kick hairs, and their bottom or their abdomen might look a little bit bare. And that could be signs of stress from a few different things that might be winter related. Maybe their appetite has slowed down, but you have continued to try to feed them and put prey items in their enclosure. And so Perhaps they're kicking hairs as a stress response to this. But it could also be, something not being comfortable in their environment. Tarantulas can't really regulate their body temperature, and in the winter, a lot of us will save money. I feel like there's either two camps that we fall into as humans. There's the ones that were going to try to save money on their bills and, kind of stick out the winter in pretty cold houses. Or there's the humans who will blast the heat. And so figure out where you are on the spectrum and try to get a little bit more towards the middle. The general rule of thumb is tarantulas are really good at room temperature. If you're comfortable, they're comfortable. I'm curious if tarantulas have stress responses to temperatures. I'm not exactly sure about that, but anything that you can do to make your tarantula's environment more comfortable is always a good idea. And the other thing that is related to things you might notice in terms of things that change is that you may find that your tarantula's water dish is drying up faster than usual. And a lot of times that is just in response to not necessarily the tarantula drinking more often, but if you are heating your house, that may impact how quickly the water either like evaporates or dries up in comparison to the summer when you weren't using heat at all. So that is just something to keep an eye on, because you don't want your tarantula to be dehydrated above all things. So those are kind of the big things that I think about in terms of things that I notice in Spidey, but also other tarantulas when the seasons change. And I'm sure that the more seasoned tarantula owners are very aware of all these things, but this is more for the beginners who, maybe this is your first winter with your spider and you notice that they're acting silly or weird or different. And this is just to say that many of those things are going to be totally normal. So anyway, guys, I hope that was helpful. If you know anything that I've left out, please leave that in the comments so that everybody can learn from it, including myself. But I hope that this was helpful for anybody who didn't know this information. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week for Tarantula Tuesday. Take care. Bye-bye.